Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Adam versus the Man. You made it. Another day, another dollar less for the American people at the expense of the American government. Oh, dude, I couldn't get that far. I couldn't get 30 seconds into the show without saying something bad about government. This is Adam versus the Man, after all. Good morning, Brad and the Producers Club. Thank you so much for joining us today. Got a great guest, Larry Sharpe, coming up on top of the hour. We got another interesting on-the-road version of Adam versus the Man here. Hope you don't hear our noisy neighbors next door too much during the show today. But we're going to have a lot of fun. We got a lot of headlines. We got a great guest. We got Comment Jim Freedom joining us from Phoenix. We got executive producer CJ Abernathy joining us from South Dakota. We've got Mercedes Dan-Bertowski coming to us from Nebraska. And, of course, our last core team member in Indiana, Marcus Pulis, who set up this wonderful interview with Larry Sharpe today. And, you know, the theme of today's show, swamped by a second wave of government. You know, there are a number of things I'm looking forward to talking about with Larry Sharpe, but one being just a New York City resident. You know, what's going on in New York City right now? How are these curfews actually? Just being able to talk to someone on the ground in New York City and get that direct perspective. And I think Larry Sharpe is a great correspondent for Adam versus the Man right now to tell us about what's going on in the belly of the statist beast. It is something else, I gotta say. Thank you, dear. That's right. Look at this. Coffee delivery on the road. I love it. I love you, baby. Mwah. There's the second wave of corona that's hitting right now. It's not, oh God, I said it. I said it wrong. Did you hear that? Did you hear what I just said? Second wave of corona. It's not the second wave of corona. It's the second wave of government. More government, more rules, more regulations, more relevancy of coercion in your life, holding back humanity from its potential. Our top story we're going to come back to in a few minutes. End of year means end of federal aid for millions of Americans. And, you know, one of the things I really appreciate, I got out of this screen. I'm just teasing it, CJ. Yeah, all right. We're going to get to that. But, man, there's you know, something we do with Adam versus the Man in as a team. And I don't just mean our core team, but the Producers Club, the editorial team, of trying to get a handle on this and a better understanding of what's going on in the world, what's affecting our lives. So if you want to join us, check out AdamVersusTheMan.com. You can find the link to Patreon, or you go straight to patreon.com/AdamVersusTheMan if you want. Of course, you can give us whatever you want. We accept donations in crypto, metals, gold-plated babies, whatever is handy that you want to donate to support this show. We're totally cool with that. Okay, no one wanted children. We're not. Well, no, I guess we can monetize them too, one way or another, right? We can do something with that. But if you want to support Adam versus the Man on Patreon, if you can get us $10 a month, that gets you in our Producers Club chat. And baby, gold-plated babies is an Alex Jones reference. I'm making fun of Alex Jones. It's not just Adam's own horrible conversation by himself over here. There's a reference, damn it. If you don't get it, that's your problem. Yeah, okay. No, gold-plated babies is like one of those famous Alex. I guess I really do need to. It's too esoteric of a reference for my audience. It did just seem weird, didn't it? Yeah, no, but gold-plated babies is like one of these Alex Jones. We've got the documents. They're making the frogs gay. Kind of references. You don't even know about the. All right. I know. See, I guess it's just. Am I an Alex Jones fan? No, I'm not. But I like Alex Jones. I'm an appreciator of him, and he has made himself so juicy, so ripe for making fun of, for lampooning in any kind of political conversation. So anyway, another way if you want to support the show, go to AdamVersusTheMan.com. Check out the store CJ's put together, and there's a lot of really cool merchandise there. Of course, you can also support our affiliate marketing program with Cigar Federation, cigarfederation.com. Check it out. Promo code ADAM10, ADAM, all caps 10. Gets you 10% off your order there. So, and then you can join us for Cigars and Sunsets Friday evenings, exclusively on twitter.com/Adam Kokesh via Periscope. Oh, man. I do not envy. I see. I'm so grateful to have CJ and the team behind the scenes doing the technicals and the distributions. I can just focus on content every day. I gotta say, if we have people requesting to see us on BitChute. Do you guys want to see us on BitChute? We need your help. We need people engaged to help beat the censors, and that's what's so awesome about the Producers Club is I get most of the links about the show. We get people wanting to step up and volunteer and take on these responsibilities and help us because right now this is not, I mean, as much as I want to say this is a business and we're making money, it's more a labor of love at this point. We're working to getting back to a serious business because we know that the demand is out there. We know that when we were doing, reaching a lot more people with Adam vs. the Man, we didn't face the same hurdles in shadow banning and censorship. And those of us who are putting in the time and the effort now, whether it's as activists, as candidates, as organizers, whatever it is, as people helping make Adam vs. the Man happen, or anybody else in independent media, just helping to get past this cloud of bullshit and lies, we really do require your help. And one of the ways, last promo here, makethemdebate.com. Check it out. Mercedes would be very happy to have your help here as our debate manager, making more debates happen. So let's get Comment Jim Freedom up on stage here and see. Do we have any worthwhile comments so early on in the show? Feels like an early morning. Feels like a good morning. How you doing, Jim?
Very good morning. I'm doing wonderful. How you doing, Adam?
Excellent. Sipping coffee in Seattle.
Hey, what are you gonna do? Walk down the street, get yourself a doobie? Yeah.
And well, we don't have to.
You're all stocked up. Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm not going to stink up the hotel room, but I will make a symbolic toke here to kick off the show.
There you go. Well, while you do that, Zachary Taylor asks, okay, but in Alex Jones's defense, can you prove that the frogs are not turning gay?
Actually, the thing about the frogs turning gay, on that particular subject, I'm actually with Alex on this one. I think the gist of his story was that there was some kind of pollutant that was hormonally, chemically, whatever, affecting the frogs, and some of them were that like, and it sounds funny, and that's what's the point of making fun of this. But a lot of amphibians, but thank you, CJ. All right, go ahead, CJ. Go ahead and roll audio so people know what I'm talking about.
Gay frogs. Won't you fight for your life? Gay frogs, freaking frogs. I don't like a frog. Gay freaking frogs. Frogs.
All right, yeah. Thank you, CJ. That's enough. I guess when we get our studio built out, we're gonna have to set it up so that I can wave papers around and smack them on the desk like Alex Jones. But no, the issue that he's calling attention to, like, are they actually making the frogs gay or not? Like, is that unintentionally by pollution causing? A lot of amphibians are sort of gender amorphous or gender flexible in the sense that they can actually, like, their physiology. Like I don't know. This is me, like, going back to my 6-year-old self geeking out on science shit. Can we do that for a minute? Like, I remember studying this stuff as a little kid, and there's like a moment you realize, like, that as like my body as a human being, like, we have a sense of the physical hardness and sort of permanence of our form of the body, whereas amphibian, like, you don't just like grow another eye when you feel like it. You study flounders, the fish that are on the bottom of the ocean, and they're born with eyes on both sides of their head, and then their eyes like shift and they're both on one side so they can lay flat on the floor of the ocean. You're like, oh, what the? Well, same thing with frogs and genitals. A lot of them actually do a sort of gender physical. I don't know what the transmorphication, transgender, whatever transition. They're transitioning. They're so if they're like actually making the frogs gay, I don't know, they're definitely fucking with the frogs. And I gotta say, like, congratulations to Alex Jones for making himself so ridiculous that he is ridiculable, that people make remix videos, and now we're talking about pollution and frogs and how the New World Order doesn't care about the environment. So, Good for you, Alex Jones.
Yeah, I suppose I was gonna say I was wondering about how much it really matters if the what the frogs' sexual preference is.
As long as they use the right bathrooms. All this because I
Yeah.
mentioned gold-plated babies. And Sam was here to be like, Adam, stop being weird. Okay.
Don't be a status says, has anyone actually seen a frog? They haven't been reproducing. Now we have no frogs in Phoenix. You do the math.
It's their frog population control. Make them get frogs aren't real. They're like birds, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. Yep. I think everybody's prep. It's kind of quiet in the comments today a little bit. Eric loves Alex Jones. I don't know if he's being sarcastic or it doesn't sound like it. He just likes him. Hey,
I
each
love
their own, right?
I mean, like of all the powerful things to hate, like you want to get serious for a second. To hate about Alex Jones, right? The sensationalism, the sort of low standard of intellectual integrity, the abandonment of freedom principles to become a Donald Trump supporter. Those are like pretty big negatives, right?
It should be good enough, right?
But I can like of all the people to love, I still have like I still love Alex Jones. Like, and I don't say this just with my like, well, I love everybody. I love human beings. Therefore, if you're human, I love you. You know, like yes, that's I'm not totally ridiculing that. I do feel that. But like of all the people to love and appreciate, I think Alex Jones is actually pretty up there in terms of moving humanity forward and waking people up and getting people to think differently. First of all, I think he's an honest man. I think he's genuine. I think he's manipulated. You can't really get to his level without that. And I would point out that he got his major success in terrestrial radio. That means with permission of the gatekeepers. So he might even be a kind of controlled opposition in that sense. They didn't want Richard Gage, who we interviewed a couple months ago, architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, representing the 9/11 Truth movement. They go, let's get crazy Alex Jones to be the biggest name in the voice and to be the face of the 9/11 Truth movement, so we can easily discredit it. But I like Alex. I love Alex Jones.
He definitely rattled the cage early on, and there's probably many positives that did come out of it, regardless of what it is he actually said. You know, in his craziest moments, he did rattle the cage and say a lot of things that, like, I saw videos from him when, a decade ago probably, and I agreed with a lot of things, like, well, yeah, that's true, and then he'd say something else that, he thinks we should do about it or something about aliens or something. And it's like, it's almost entertaining to watch at best, and then it's almost like the political comedians, you know what I mean? Sometimes, they're just ranting off and going crazy on a stint, but then next show they'll bring up something that actually makes a little bit of sense and make you think about something. And even if he has a stupid view on it, it makes you think about the idea that you can go research yourself, so
yeah no, the comedian, like, instead of being funny, Alex Jones is just fear porning, right? But then he'll go off and exaggerate stuff, and Sandy Hook was all staged, and I don't even care to weigh in on that bullshit one way or another. But yeah, if he's doing that kind of stuff like a comedian, like, I don't really mean this, but it's hilarious. Check it out. Like, I don't really think this is true, but check out this crazy, scary possibility. That's like, yeah, I'm geeking out over this. Geek out on it with me, and then question and live differently and live better. And in that sense, Alex Jones and I would say even more so that the InfoWars team as a whole has really been a huge force for good, by any libertarian analysis of, how do we need to change the conversation? I'd rather be surrounded by people like Alex Jones than people like Dan Crenshaw, who I ran into on Twitter today because he got into a long back and forth with our friend, Libertarian Congressman Justin Amash. If you don't know Dan Crenshaw, he's the pirate congressman, the veteran who's missing an eye. And Crenshaw said something about criticizing Trump's troop withdrawals. Like he's trying to be the new Mitch McConnell. And there are always assholes auditioning to be mouthpieces for the military-industrial complex, and to hear them now saying, "Oh, we can't take back 1/3 of the troops in Iraq and Afghanistan," and that's we covered this yesterday, but yeah, I had to point out for Crenshaw's benefit because someone tagged me in this. Now I gotta say, what did I say again this morning on Twitter? But someone tagged me in this, and this was actually a really extensive back and forth between Crenshaw and Amash. And at one point, Dan Crenshaw asks, "Immoral? ? Based on ? My friends risking their lives understand a basic truth that you refuse to. This enemy wants to kill us. Protecting America's flank is indeed moral, a basic duty of government, and yes, dangerous. Thankfully, we have people willing to take that risk when you won't." There is so much propaganda. Like, I really want to take a minute here to deconstruct this fear porn, terrorism fear porn propaganda that is still being used to manipulate the American people, or at least try and to justify this standard of militarism. So instead of saying immoral based on ? Like, he doesn't say that it's moral because we're defending ourselves, although I guess you could say he's trying to make that case. But I think back to, it's like, this is such old shit. I did this for the Chris Kyle movie. You remember asking people, well, if Chris Kyle is a hero for defending his country, okay, where was he? Oh, he was in Iraq. Who was he fighting? Oh, people who were Iraqis. And what were they? Oh, they were defending their country. So really, they're the heroes by the standard, and that would make Chris Kyle not a hero if you. And just like a simple examination of this should be enough to get people to reject it. So I hope just looking at this for a second, we can analyze this. But my friends risking their lives understand a basic truth that you refuse to. I'm going to go part by part, and we're going to deconstruct, because there's Dan Crenshaw is a really effective propagandist for imperialism, for the empire, for the stormtroopers, for the military-industrial complex, and he packs a lot of bullshit into this one tweet. So my friends risking their lives, he's invoking, my buddy's in the military, and it's like, oh, okay, because they're risking their lives. Therefore what? Therefore this is correct. And you see, it's not an appeal to logic. It's not an appeal based on evidence or reason. It's an emotional appeal. It's, don't forget, there are men. There are rough men waiting to do violence against those who would do you harm, and that is why you can sleep safe at night in your bed. And it's like, that's not what this is. The truth that you refuse to, this enemy wants to kill us. Now, the basic truth, you just refuse to acknowledge the truth, is another sort of intellectual bullying, as opposed to an actual appeal to logic and reason. Now, this enemy wants to kill us. Well, which enemy? Which deep state sponsored terrorist organization are you referring to justify militarism this time? Right? Jim, what did you hear? What were you told to be afraid of back in your day in the Army?
Well, again, as it's noted, I'm pre-war. I'm pre-9/11, so they
hold
weren't
on,
really drilling anything into us. It was, general enemy combatant understanding.
Drew Carey, former Marine reservist, likes to joke about his service by saying, we kept the communists out of Cleveland in the 80s. And it's like, that was, but even for you in your era, you're a little later, there were boogeymen. And what bothers me about this so much, like intellectually, and seeing the propaganda here, this enemy. Are we talking Al Qaeda? Because Al Qaeda's been raised again recently. Are we talking ISIS? Are we talking just general Muslim extremism? Are we just supposed to be afraid of the Muzis because they're this enemy? And the wants to kill us thing. Who's us? If they want to kill members of Congress, or Dan Crenshaw and the turd in his pocket, hey, have at it. So liberate us. It's a lot like Donald Trump said about Iran. We need to liberate the Iranian people from their tyrannical government. Well, really, if terrorists came and killed every member of Congress, I mean, I hate to say Justin Amash is the one good one there. Like, well, I think Justin would recognize the benefit of the sacrifice there. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? Yeah, we're gonna work in a Star Trek reference before we get to any headlines here too. But yeah, I think Justin Amash would say that, and I don't want to presume for Justin in case there are any terrorists watching taking notes, that someone like Amash who recognizes the evil of the foreign policy that is committed by people like Dan Crenshaw in the name of the American people and me, right, as I did and have renounced for my military service, but that if we could end that racket, I mean, I would give my life if he said, Adam, you got to die, but as a result, there's going to be no more American military wars from this corrupt military industrial complex killing innocent people. I'd be like, yeah, I still believe in that. I still believe in that sacrifice. That ethos, that actual, warrior spirit, not this fear mongering bullshit. But this enemy wants to kill us. And this is why in my response, I had to post my video, The Restraint of Muslims. And it's got a big warning on it, graphic violence, because it shows, the Jordanian pilot being burned alive. But it's got a lot of statistics that make it just overwhelmingly clear that we should be grateful for the restraint of Muslims. That so many in the Middle East have been killed by the U.S. military. And even if you give them credit for 9/11, which I don't, even if you give them credit for every single terrorist attack that's ever happened in the United States, the death count, the body count is a drop in the bucket. Almost insignificant. Like, even you want to talk about like 3,000 dead on 9/11, if you want to give them credit for that, I don't. Again, can't. But if you do, it's you want to go, well, geez, where have more people died? You've got to weigh that, 3,000 and a few thousand others of every American who's ever died in any kind of terrorist attack versus every Muslim who's died as a result of American military invasion and occupation in the Middle East. Like, it's absurd. It is when you realize that, and you hear someone like Dan Crenshaw make the statement, this enemy wants to kill us, it's fucking inhumane. It's when you see, it looks like two people fighting, but really it's one person just beating up on the other, and a bully just beating up over and over and over and over again on their victim. And then the victim of the bullying finally manages to land a little punch and push the bully back for a second, and then the bully convinces you, oh yeah, see this guy I've been beating up for hours. He wants to hurt me now, and falling for that. I don't think the American people are falling for this attempt to so distort that perspective. So he goes on, protecting America's flank is indeed moral, a basic duty of government, and yes, dangerous. Well, first of all, protecting America's flank. They don't hate us because we're free. I mean, this thing needs to be just, I mean, I don't hear it, but it's kind of like, it needs to be pointed out as a premise of what he's saying here, right? That the terrorists are a threat to America's flank. No, they want to fight the military. They want to fight the government. They want to liberate their countries. They want to stop what war crimes are being committed in the name of the American people. Basic duty of government. And again, this is so un-American. As the founders were opposed to a standing army, they wanted a militia-based defense. So in and of itself, what Dan is advocating for here is socialism in the realm of defense. Dangerous, yeah, of course it's dangerous, but if you're pointing that out, that's not what's being debated here. It seems like an emotional field. Thankfully, we have people willing to take that risk when you won't. And it's like, oh, really? You're going to resort to that? That's this kind of like non-military shame. And Jim, we've talked about this. It's so important for people to get through. Like, no, you being in the military in and of itself makes you less of a warrior, not more of a warrior. Because a warrior being someone who is willing to put their lives on the line to defend people who can't defend themselves, to protect the innocent, to make those sacrifices necessary to protect people. Whereas a soldier is someone who has volunteered to kill for politicians. And that's what being in the military is more about than truly being a warrior. In that sense, I think Dan Crenshaw here is the pitiful, disgusting socialist who is a soldier, who is a henchman, who is a subservient, servile, un-American, and it is Justin Amash who is actually the warrior. So my response here was immoral based on Christian just war theory and basic human ethics. And you know, if I wasn't limited to 140 characters, I would have kept going with you know, if you got any basic concept of ethics, you'd be a libertarian. We were unwitting accomplices in a war crime, Dan. Take your collectivist terrorism, fear porn somewhere else. The American people aren't buying it, and in some perspective, the restraint of Muslims. And if you haven't watched that video, I hope you'll go back and watch it. But anyway, that was my morning on Twitter. Jim?
Outstanding. That's crazy. Yeah, that guy's tweet is definitely rife with propagandist general sheep mentality. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, it's the most. I mean, it seems so obvious to me. I don't know what what to tell people to make it obvious to them too. You know what I mean?
If there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, this is it. Of perverting the divine masculine, the true warrior spirit into Dan Crenshaw's brand of subservient, cuckolded, just subservient, servile soldiers willing to do the bidding of politicians at the expense of doing the right thing, at the expense of freedom, where you preserve the aggression of the masculinity, but you subvert the noble spirit behind it and replace it with a feminized, subservient version where you shave your face, look like a woman, put on a uniform, give up your individuality, and serve the military rather than serving the people and serving freedom. And it is dangerous. This is that perversion of, whether you want to use some of these terms or not. Maybe we'll have a panel in the next couple of weeks deconstructing all of this. So please don't get hung up on my language on this. But obviously, in terms of what it's supposed to mean to be a man or a warrior or just a good human being, the perversion of that by the militarism that Dan Crenshaw and Mitch McConnell and all of these other war hawks coming out of the woodwork now, that Trump is lame duck and talking about withdrawing a few of the troops, not even a significant number at this point, from Iraq and Afghanistan. I think it's important that we stand up for that divine, righteous, moral masculinity in the face of this.
For sure. I like what 1054 chimes in. He says, I'd like to think that people around the world understand more and more that governments start and sustain wars, not the citizenry. Info superhighway for the win, maybe.
All right. Yeah, no, the check on this power with the internet, I mean, this is something that I've talked about a number of times in terms of, you can't convince millions of gullible young men to meet in the middle of a field where none of them live and kill each other because they're wearing different colors the way that you used to be able to, when we can all talk to each other with the internet all over the world. And that kind of connectedness is the ultimate check on war based on lies that always require a disconnect and otherness, creation of an enemy, and a dehumanization of the enemy, as we called it. So, Jim, do you have any contest, anything you want to? We didn't really have a good, solid contest yesterday. It was too obvious that New Jersey and Oregon, despite drugs being all decrimmed, there are the two places in America where you are not allowed to pump your own gas. I just love that contrast. Like, yeah, in Oregon, you can basically do whatever drugs you want. but you can't pump your own gas at the gas station. And I don't know if I said this yesterday, but the first stop on our trip in Oregon, I just got out of the truck and started pumping gas, and the dude comes up to me and is like, "Hey man, you need a hand with that?" And I was like, "No, it's cool, I got it." And then he walked away, like giving me a weird look, and I was like, "Oh, we're in Oregon. Technically, I just broke the law. Okay."
I'm surprised he didn't tell you, like, no, it's against the law. Don't you know? You must be an out of towner. You
Well,
know, like,
I don't have a plate on the truck yet because I just bought it.
right,
So
but still, anybody, I mean, being that the state, it's just the way it is there, you would think any gas station attendant would be like, yo, don't you know you're not allowed to do that? Hello.
this is that, maybe this is the thing for the contest today, Jim, because that reminds me one of the most important things that we haven't really gotten into lately with talking about COVID. Believe it or not, we have some COVID headlines to get to today.
No.
Yeah. Like we got to do more panels and special episodes so we can have like a break from. But even then, you can't. Again, you have to accept that there is this. It is a dark cloud hanging over everything, and to pretend it's not there for a while might be nice, but you can't ignore it. And the thing about this second wave that we're experiencing right now, it's I'm disappointed in America. I'm disappointed in humanity that we haven't really we're still allowing government to do this. But the thing that I've thought of that's so positive out of all of this, at a much aside from again, why we need your support. We the people need to be the ones writing the history of the coronavirus pandemic so that we don't let them sweep under the rug all the times that they were wrong and did things that made the situation actually worse biologically. But the idea is that everybody is a civil disobedience activist to one degree or another because of corona, because the lockdowns and the shutdowns have been and the guidelines have been impossible to follow. I mean, not impossible, but for most Americans, you're going to wear a mask by those guidelines. You're really going to abide by those curfews. You're really going to every little activity that they say you're not supposed to do. You're going to do with perfect 6 foot. You're never going to accidentally get 5 foot 6 inches away from somebody else. No, and that they kind of accepted that. The rules are I don't want to make fun of any particular individual family members, but I recently I'll say it like this. I had a family member refer to other family members as compulsive rule followers. And even for them, it's like, well, wait, is it 14 days or 7 days of quarantine? Or is it 3 days? And how often are we supposed to get tested? And are we allowed to, is this essential? Is that essential? Like you can't, it's impossible. And I think for people like that who you could describe as you think about it, Jim, what percentage of the American people would you think would you describe as compulsive rule followers?
5% maybe.
But just it's that low, you think?
Yeah, that are compulsively. Yeah, most people break the rules. No seatbelt is one that hits 95% right there. I think. You know what I mean? No turn signal, rolling stop signs. Give me a break.
All right,
Nobody
hold on
compulsive.
Okay, so now you're getting to what I'm talking about here. This is a really fun. We're going to turn this into a contest question for the day to give away membership in the Producers Club, because this is a good kind of help us figure something out editorial here, right? Do you think Jim? You're making the case that 95% of the American people regularly, deliberately don't wear a seatbelt.
Well, no, I guess I don't want to go, making that specific of a claim on the seatbelt specifically, but I know it's a large number. I would venture to say that the majority of people don't wear their seatbelts on a regular basis. It would be a higher percentage that don't use their blinkers. I could tell you that right now. Guarantee you. My own father blinker in years, probably, unless I make him do it.
See this. So this is the question. I want to come back. We're going to ask Larry about this. We're going to ask Larry about, his take on COVID in New York. We're going to ask him about what's coming up with his activism in the Libertarian Party. Excuse me. We're going to talk to him about this as well. Like in civil disobedience in general in the era of Corona, but specifically in terms of the broader question. Excuse me, of like how many Americans does this represent, and has this shifted in a positive or negative way? So first, like as background on this, I'm not a compulsive rule breaker, although it feels like it sometimes. But I am a compulsive rule questioner. But it's not compulsive. It's deliberate, because the people that were being referred to were not part of the Jewish part of my family. And so I was like, maybe they're not aware of what following the rules has led to in the past, like just, I hate to play that card, because I am a revisionist, certainly, of a lot of that history. But I think having gone, like, to me, it's rational, having been ordered to do something unethical and illegal in torturing people in Iraq, and coming to have done the important work of understanding and processing that, that makes me kind of a compulsive questioner of authority. When authority, I've seen the destructiveness that it leads to firsthand, and how it can pervert good intentions. Anyway, I want to get to these headlines at least before we get to Larry coming on the show here. So, Marcus is putting in the chat that he wants to talk about. He wants me to ask him if he's ready to endorse localization for 2024. Wouldn't that be fun? But this bigger question of, where is America on this, by this sort of obvious direct metric of obedience. How American are Americans right now? How many are compulsive rule questioners or consistent rule questioners? How many are regular rule breakers? How many are people who, like you would suggest that it's 95% that at least sometimes conscientiously break the rules, and it's only 5% who are compulsive rule followers? So if you can put a number on that, I mean, that's a big question. How many Americans are so un-American that they are actually compulsive rule followers today? Is that a good enough question for the chat, Jim?
Well, and then it's just speculation as to what you agree with. You'd have to add an explanation as to why you think that number, why you know.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. The best answer here. Like, you gotta explain it. All right. So we'll check
it. Last thing, don't be a statist brings up probably the most powerful point. Everyone speeds, like in driving. I would say pretty close, 90 or 95% of the people on the road that I observe while driving, and I drive a lot, I won't go over 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, but I will go 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, which is breaking the rule. And I get passed constantly. I get passed by old ladies. I get passed by everybody. I get passed by semi trucks. 95% of people go over the posted speed limit at multiple points throughout their driving, daily, regularly, all the time.
Well, for some, how many though don't? Because it could be 5-10% that never do, that they accept that, occasionally I'm going to slip, or I'm going to go into a lower speed zone and I'm going to be ahead by a couple miles an hour. But they're
not consciously.
They're generally trying to actually follow the limit.
Right.
Like, that's still a decent chunk of drivers out there.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, no, I've wondered about this, Jim. Is that engineered? It's got to be, right? Because there's some places where it's like, no, this is a speed limit. Like, this is actually the limit. You go 1 over consistently, or you're going to get pulled over. Like, there are a few places like that in the United States. And I wonder, for the majority not being like that, if this is simply a quirk of driving, or if this is some like bigger social engineering thing to say, well, we want to give everybody a little continuous outlet for their rebelliousness. They can feel that it makes them more inclined to be obedient on the things that we care about. All right. With that, let's get to some headlines. We're going to be checking back in with Jim and the audience later on in the show, and probably taking questions from the audience for Larry Sharpe if I don't get carried away with it myself. So, Bloomberg, Quint.com, end of year means end of federal aid for millions of Americans. A whole range of pandemic aid programs are set to expire in the new year, leaving millions of Americans without the government support that's helped keep them afloat and threatening to hold back a rebounding economy. The biggest blow will likely come from the end of 2 federal unemployment insurance programs, with roughly 12 million people facing a late December cutoff, according to a study released Wednesday by the Century Foundation. Also, measures that froze student loan payments, offered mortgage forbearance, and halted evictions have a year-end deadline, and so do Federal Reserve lending facilities for small businesses and local governments. We've been following pretty closely, although there hasn't been much about this lately, the impending eviction crisis resulting from COVID. And again, in terms of writing the history of this thing, it is very important that we don't let them push all of their prior crimes that have gotten us to this point down the memory hole. So just think back when we first saw the government responding following Trump's national declaration of a state of emergency. $9 trillion of liquidity added to the market. Just government going, more money, get it. And if I have to be critical of myself here, and I do, to be responsible as a journalist, of course, I would say that I've been wrong in some of my projections and predictions, but really more in just kind of being impatient or underestimating government's ability to draw things out. What we saw in March, and again, cannot forget this, is that there was a forced unemployment crisis when employment, boom, fell off a cliff because of shutdown orders. And there have been, variations in this. You can't say that there's like a smooth flow of tyranny when we talk about policy. There are more steps and sudden, relief moments of the employment oppression, and sudden cliffs that you fall off into crises where unemployment skyrockets. And we have pretty good mechanisms for dealing with that. And when the government can just, boom, add money to the economy, you can bail out a lot of these programs. You can keep money flowing for unemployment benefits. And you can even have, aid to companies to minimize unemployment. And we've covered again in the story. It's getting old, because I told you from the beginning, when the government says, "Oh yeah, we're on all these loans, loans, we're just giving out billions of dollars in corporate handouts." There's going to be a lot of corruption. There's going to be a lot of theft. There's going to be a lot of funds that get misdirected. And just recently, we covered the story that even for those companies that were being, propped up by these bailouts, by the loans for employment, that a lot of those businesses failed anyway, because the shutdown, the greater restrictions are continuing. And I just have to point out as well that even at this point, they've done so much damage. When people say it's never going to come back. Yeah, they got their reset. One example with this that I just have to remind everybody of is with restaurants. It doesn't matter if the government says, "Oh yeah, now restaurants can operate as normal." If half of your customer base is afraid to come in, you're screwed. Not a viable business anymore. A lot of restaurants, a lot of people who depend on the restaurant business for their employment recognize that it's a very fragile industry, in the sense that a lot of the institutions, businesses, distributors, etc., are based on very, very slim margins. And if you don't have that complete customer base consistently coming in, buying food at your restaurant, maybe you can't pay the rent. And there are a lot of places like that now where they're operating at quarter capacity, and you're like, this isn't sustainable. No way. So there are a lot more cliffs coming, but they might not be cliffs. And again, this is where I would say I have to somewhat revise my estimates, as good as they have been, and just pushing them back a little bit. And we were looking at the potential of the start of an eviction crisis a couple months ago when one of the major national moratoriums on evictions ran out, and it hasn't quite happened. I mean, I got to be honest, like but now that when I see this, and you go, well, it's going to get worse. There's another cliff coming, with these year-end deadlines approaching. But then, I go, well, hey, let's not underestimate government's ability to bail people out, to print more money. So you got an incoming administration, new Congress, Senate being sworn in early January. We've got Democrats maintaining control of the House, of course, possibly going into Pelosi's last term as Speaker. But they have the potential to spend a lot more money, and if I had to predict, yes, they're going to be able to manage this until it's over. They're going to they're not going to allow this resulting in an actual eviction homelessness crisis. I mean, we already see. I hate to lower my standards of those things or raise the bar for those things, because we already have an incredible surge in homelessness in the United States as a result of this, and unemployment and evictions already. If it wasn't for the great standard of the cliff of the unemployment crisis, the forced unemployment crisis, we would be calling what we're experiencing now an eviction crisis and a homelessness crisis. But they're going to be able to roll this out slowly. There's going to be more government aid, and maybe even sooner, but certainly by January, with the new Congress and with Biden getting sworn in, there's going to be a huge push by the Democrats right now to take care of the American people as best they can with welfare and handouts and bailouts. And so you get ready. There's going to be a rush for that, and I would say get ready to sign up. Don't think, well, just because this money is stolen, I'm not allowed to touch it. No, it's been stolen from you as an American, as a taxpayer. And if you need to do whatever you got to do to fill out the forms the right way to get a chunk of your money back, I say do it. So stand by, be ready. There are going to be more announcements. There are going to be special relief programs. And the way they're rolling out the vaccine for this now, or vaccines, and it's going to be a while, but they're also going to they're either going to get to switch to a phase where they go from economic suppression to using the vaccine as a means of control. Now, are we going to get to forced vaccinations? Not quite. But what would you say it's a forced vac? Like if I stole your home, if I stole your house, and said, well, I'll let you back in. You can't own it anymore, but I'll let you back in if you get this vaccine. Is that a forced vaccination? No. To take that metaphor to reality here, Ticketmaster is going to say that you're not going to be able to get tickets to concerts or any of their other events without proof of having been vaccinated. Now you go, Adam, but where's the stealing the house part come into this? Well, if it wasn't for corporatism, if it wasn't for taxes and federal regulations, you wouldn't have the conglomerization of the music industry, and certainly not tickets being all sold under this singular massive entity known as Ticketmaster. So there are a lot of things about this. As long as we're talking about the music industry, we see that we got another story about that today, that the music industry might be cut in half by some metrics as a result of this. But back to the main story. What is this fiscal cliff that we see approaching for January? Some COVID-19 assistance could potentially be attached to a spending bill needed to avoid a federal government shutdown, but with Congress deadlocked and a White House transition looming, the outlook for another stimulus package this year is bleak. President Donald Trump hasn't outlined a plan to extend the aid programs via executive order, and his successor, Joe Biden, won't take office until the second half of January. All this poses risks to a U.S. economy that's recovered faster than expected, yet still has a long way to go, particularly with the resurgence of COVID-19 cases, bringing a new wave of restrictions on business. While in aggregate, Household finances are in great shape. The strength is uneven, with jobs still 10 million below February levels. And there's so many ways these, again, got to remind everybody that 86.75309% of all statistics are bullshit made up to manipulate you, and this is nothing worse. So there's another section of the story about gig workers, and for people who are left out of the system, this is a lot harder than for people who are super plugged in. And that's one of the things that they've always had in their back pocket as a libertarian. Like I've been always aware of this, but now we're seeing it played out, right? As someone like because I've decided, hey, I'm not gonna work a schmuck job. I'm not gonna pay taxes. Let you take them out of my paycheck without me even having a chance to withhold and say, no, you can't steal from me. And I'm going to live off grid, and I'm going to separate myself from the system as much as I can. Well, I'm still not completely separated. I still, unfortunately, have to use I can't do everything in crypto. I have to use the US dollar. I have to, in some things, I have to interact with the state in other ways. I choose to, to go to Walmart occasionally to order stuff online from Amazon. And so in that sense, I'm plugged in, but I'm not plugged into the point of, well, government's going to take care of you because you're one of the favored obedient workers, And so for all these people in these programs, what they can do is say, oh, well, we're gonna screw over everybody, but we're going to take care of people who are, sucking that government D on the daily, who are really plugged in, who are going to get that relief. That's what's coming. There's going to be another dangerous separation. And in a way, we have to stand strong and take care of each other. And I would just remind people that economically, this isn't just a time, for mental health, to reach out to people who are stressed, to be supportive of your community, but also to have that awareness about, people who are getting disadvantaged by this. There's another section in the story, tenant evictions. The CARES Act, the main pandemic relief measure passed in March, prohibited landlords with federally guaranteed mortgages from evicting tenants. When that moratorium expired in July, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention halted evictions of eligible tenants through December 31. Several states have enacted their own suspensions. Just a handful extend beyond year end. Now, the whole tenant eviction thing, there's another section here, mortgage forbearance. All of these are temporary plugs, and they're not, there's no way that government can actually carry out their intended goals without there being unintended consequences here. And it's not just unintended consequences. A lot of the consequences are completely intended. As I would remind everybody, what is the real purpose of government? To keep the super rich getting richer at the expense of the rest of us. There's another section here on student debt and federal loans. So we are going to see major economic realignments. We are going to see, at least between now and the full realization of the potential of whatever vaccine is on the horizon, when they switch from be afraid of COVID to be afraid of the unvaccinated. This is the reality that we're facing. There are going to be a lot more people suffering. We're seeing the biggest power grab, perhaps by at least by the numbers, in the entire course of human history. You look at how much wealth and power is being concentrated with COVID as the excuse. With a little historical perspective, you go, wow, this is truly, truly frightening. And while there might not be another dramatic cliff, I would say that while we are experiencing this second wave of government, of government power, of government ripoffs, of government relevance in our daily lives, that we stay strong. And this is the time to not just be ready to fight back. Maybe now that the election has passed, we can fight back in more meaningful, long-term, enduring ways without that distraction. But also, as we've been saying, really since the beginning of this thing, it is still the time to be looking out for people in your communities, to be looking out for the mental health of those, your friends, your family, your neighbors, people who might be suffering in ways that we don't fully appreciate based on our own situation because of that, and to just stay strong, as humans, as part of this great global family where we are, remember, not just suffering in the United States, but all over the world under this dark cloud of corona hanging over everything. And speaking of which, we go now to our guest. Larry Sharpe is backstage. This is exciting. All right, because Larry Sharpe as the host of The Sharp Way, of course, longtime libertarian activist, successful candidate, coming to us from New York today. A lot of things we got to cover. Larry, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing, brother?
I'm not going to say I call myself successful candidate. I'm not sure that's true. Candidate, yes.
Hey,
Successful.
Libertarian standards, Larry. Libertarian standards. The
That's
goal.
true.
And I don't know. I don't have to remind you of this, but I would say to our audience that, you know, as libertarians, as party activists, and as candidates, we don't know that we're going to win and we're going to get to wear the ring of power, but we know that we're spreading a righteous message. And Larry, I would be totally happy if libertarians never won a single election ever again, but we started accelerating the process that we're already using of I don't know, political shaming Republicans and Democrats into doing the right thing and slowly dragging them towards more libertarian positions. Is that fair?
I think it's a valid point, right? Don't get me wrong. Of course, I want us to win elections. Of course, I do, right? But if we didn't, but we made change, I'd still be okay, right? I'm on record. When at the end of my Joe Rogan interview, Joe Rogan was like, "Larry, those ideas are great ideas," and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where'd you get them from?" I said, "Me and my team made them up." He goes, "Oh, great." He said, "Well, you better lock those ideas down." I said, "Why?" He said, "People will take them." I said, "Take them. I don't have to run anymore. I'll go back home to my family." If we were to change everything, if all of a sudden my governor, this would never happen, but if all of a sudden my governor said, "You know what? I have seen the light. I am now going to be just like Larry Sharpe and adopt all of his ideas," I would never run again. I'd be like, "Done. I win." And I completely agree. Yes.
Yeah, I want to underscore this point because I don't think if you haven't done this or like been involved enough, you might not fully appreciate that when you decide I'm going to run for office as a libertarian, you're inherently saying, screw my chances at glory and personal edification and, you know, getting my name on buildings. I'm going to do the right thing. Chips fall where they may. Because if I was not of that spirit, I would be a Republican or Democrat trying to suck up to the mainstream, because then I get more personal glorification out of that. We have inherently rejected that. And by saying I'm going to run as a libertarian, I'm putting principle before personal glorification.
I'm not sure that's true. Look at some of our libertarians who run. Some of them run so they can be personally powerful and strong and celebritarians in our small pond. So I think the better ones don't do that. You're right. But I think some do. Some are like, you know, I can't be a big fish in a big pond, so I'll be a big fish in a small pond. And I'll run so I can be super cool in my small area, or, you know, be cool in my little fiefdom. So I think you're right in theory. And I think most people who are better candidates do think that way. But there is a cadre of people who are running because no one's paying attention to me. So I'll run, so they will.
I think of people who have sort of like infiltrated the party as not quite libertarians. I mean, you make me think more back to like Bob Barr and who you know, and I would say Mike Gravel, you know, who are like, "Oh, we're not being, Democrats and Republicans aren't paying attention to us. Let's go." I don't know if you want to talk about more recent nominees, but that's the exception, and they're obvious. But those of us who are running for the right reasons, it really is a certain willingness to accept that doing the right thing comes first, winning comes second.
Yes, but there's a problem with that. I think you're right, and there's a problem. This is a yes and, right. The people who are seen the most aren't those who are doing it for the right reasons, if that makes sense, right? The people who become more popular, the people who go on TV more, most of them, or who keep going, most of them, I think, aren't those people. But there's another problem though, and that other problem is the more people we have running, the less support we have for people who are running, because we have a very small talent pool, right? I'm a business guy, right? And I look at the talent that I have available to me, right? I have less talent available. At best, active libertarians are maybe 2% of our population. At best, I'm probably stretching with that, right? Active libertarians, people who know the libertarians, right? Who get it, who want to do something. At best, 2% of our population. How much talent do I have? people who know how to raise money, people know how to organize, people know how to manage, people know how to speak properly, people know policy issues. It's limited. And if I'm taking out, for the sake of argument, 100 people, and if I'm making 50 of them candidates, I've only got 50 support staff. That means 1 per. But if I instead only have 10 candidates, now I got 10 support staff for each one of them stronger. So I would prefer more people to say, I want to make impact. I don't have to make impact as a candidate. I can make impact someplace else. I hope I'm that example, right? I've only run one time. I ran for governor. Other than that, I'm doing this stuff, right? So I'm supporting others. In my show, Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live, this year, I think I interviewed 75 different local libertarian candidates, trying to give them some extra oomph, trying to give them some extra confidence, trying to support them. Very often I take calls for people and give them advice on what I learned from my campaign, hoping it will assist them. So you can make impact without running. I'm not saying you shouldn't run. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we shouldn't assume that if I want to be principled, if I want to move the movement forward, running isn't the only answer. Running is one answer that you should take if you think it's appropriate for you, but there are other ways.
All right, Larry, enough libertarian navel gazing here. How many people have you seen drop dead in the streets in New York recently with COVID? It's everybody, right? Are you the last living person in New York at this point?
We do have attractive navels, so thanks for gazing. But no, actually, New York City is no longer the hub anymore. Now it's the Midwest. So but no, the funny thing about New York City is we are going out of our way to destroy our city. We're just going out of our way to just devastate our city. We have thrown out cryptocurrency. We won't legalize cannabis in New York State. Yep, just insane. We won't do it. We're now destroying finance to the point where Wall Street's considering packing up and moving to Texas. That's the newest thing that's they're doing. Yep. And
really?
On Wall Street. On Wall Street right now, for those people who don't know this, since 9/11, and it's gotten worse since the crash, there's only one bank on Wall Street. Only one. You can live on Wall Street. Like it's apartments now. You can have an address, 35 Wall Street. Now the only bank that's on Wall Street now is Deutsche Bank because they own the building. Everyone else has moved to Park Avenue, which is where the rich people are. That's why I moved my office there. So I could get I get some of that money, Adam. Say I got to get paid. So I moved my office on Park Avenue because of that. So they're all on Park Avenue now, and the biggest chunks now are actually moving out in San Francisco because right now people haven't figured this out. Sorry, New York State hasn't figured this out. Tech no longer follows finance. Finance follows tech. So now they've moved to San Francisco. Well, with that, they're trying to go to places where they are more friendly. Wyoming is friendly. Texas is friendly. California is not becoming friendly. So bankers are moving out there to follow tech. So my city is getting destroyed. So what's my city about now? Heavily, it is now about tourism. We have the UN. We have
but not after 10 p.m. This is a perfect segue.
Thank you.
How do you have a tourism industry in the city that never sleeps?
We don't.
With a 10 p.m. curfew.
Because our city now sleeps. You're correct. Yes, our city now sleeps. That's the problem. It shouldn't be doing that, but it does. You're exactly correct. And we are going out of our way to trash our city. Our city is being destroyed. The wealthy are leaving like there's no tomorrow. It doesn't. And here's the worst part about it. Now, since COVID hit in March, and my governor, King Andrew Cuomo II, all hail the king, since he deemed me non-essential, I was unable to go work because he, in his eminent wisdom, has decided I'm not valuable. So I've had to change my business model to heavily coaching. Most of the people that I coach are wealthy or at least well off. Not all, but most are either wealthy or well off. They're not New York City anymore. If you're wealthy in New York City, you don't have one home. You have one home in Manhattan usually, and another someplace else. Jersey Shore, upstate New York, Connecticut, Florida, something like that. These people have moved to these secondary homes, and now they found a way to work and function from their secondary homes. Much nicer and cheaper homes. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. And when they don't come back, all the people who service them don't come back. All the people who service them don't come back. And all of a sudden now the city struggles tremendously. My city was at 8.5 million, the largest city in the country. It will still remain the largest city in the country, but it's going to go below 8.5 million, and it's never going to come back. I don't think it's ever going to break 7.5 million, or maybe even 7 million ever again. That's going to happen. Now, when it comes to COVID, Are we getting hospitalization? Of course we are. We're a densely packed city. And the density is one of the biggest things. So of course we're going to have COVID. At the same time, New York City has some of the best medical facilities in the country. So we are also going to be having a higher survivability rate. We are doing something very well. The other issue we have is we have an elderly population in New York City also. Lots of elderly people. So the numbers, while they're high, when you compare them to 8.5 million, remember, New York City, the population of New York City is larger than 40 states. So because of that, you're going to see a difference. It isn't as bad as someone would think.
Well, so let me ask you a bigger background question now. In terms of the virus itself, how much of a unique threat do you believe it actually represents, and how much, generally speaking, has that threat been exaggerated by government, and particularly the New York City government?
Yes. The threat, without question, is a real threat. I do not believe that COVID is a hoax. It is nowhere near as bad as the reaction. It doesn't warrant anything near that. It is nowhere near as bad as CNN would make you believe. It is a real threat. And if you are over, say, 70 and you have a pre-existing condition, that comorbidity is horrible and it will take you out. That is clear. It is absolutely a threat, particularly if you are in that age range with another issue. Absolutely. As a whole in New York City, not crazy. I was literally on the subway almost every day. The New York City subway, almost every day, December, January, March. I traveled the state just 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I went to every single county in New York State, all 62, did it in 5 weeks, met people at every one. I didn't see people dropping dead anywhere. I didn't see people dropping dead. In one of our counties, Yates County in New York State, there are about 30,000 people, give or take, in that county. And they had a total of 6 COVID deaths, all from one nursing home. So, yeah, it's nowhere near as bad. It is a threat, but nowhere near as bad. I mean, I have 2 people in my life who are over 80 and have pre-existing conditions. I do not visit those people because I'm afraid it will kill them. That's real, right? I care about those people. I don't hang out with them. But otherwise, I tend to just, I put a mask on to make people happy. Most people in New York City are wearing a mask. I put it on to make people happy. I do it, and I live my life.
Do you have any other things that you're dealing with other than mask mandates and the 10 p.m. curfew? This is relatively new, is it not, for New York and all of this that just happened this last week? And
it's not new. It's reestablished.
Okay, so there was a period where you had a curfew on in New York City earlier, and then it came off and back on. How are people dealing with this? Is there civil disobedience? Is there meaningful enforcement, or are people just kind of complying?
You know that New York City is basically a communist state, right? You're aware of that? Yes, it's basically a communist state. So no.
Is that why you live there, Larry?
I was actually born here in Manhattan. So yes, and I'm 52. So I've been in New York a bit. I know my state relatively well. But no, the problem is most people just go, oh, okay, that's it. And they just accept it. And then when they go under, they walk away and they don't come back. That's the problem, right? Most people don't know, New York City is 1/3 of New York City residents are not born in the country. Another 1/3 are not born in New York City. So only about 1/3 of New York City's population is born in New York City. So they all have family and friends someplace else. So when stuff gets bad, they go home. They just go, I'm done. I'm out. And they leave. Right. The glory that has been New York City and why it can still survive and thrive in the past, that is, with such a communist state, is because the opportunity was so huge. People would put up with the oppression because the opportunity was massive, particularly if you were a woman and English was your second language. You could not beat New York City if that was who you were. We're so open to that, everything like that. So many people not being here, not caring about gender, right? It was one of the issues that I dealt with when I began to look running for office, not understanding my own mindset in New York State, right? In New York State, the gender wars are basically over. Right? I mean, nobody cares. Like, if you're gay or straight or whatever, or bi or poly, Can you do the job, man, or not? Can you get this done or not? I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. We don't even talk about it. It's not a thing. If that makes
The
sense.
fight to get past sexual judgment.
Done. That war's over in my city. That war's over, right? There's a couple of people who still get mad here or there, but no, they're shunned and people don't really care. But outside of New York City, clearly that war is not over, right? And me being in the city, sometimes it blinds me by what I see here. And I think that happens to me often living in this city so long. I don't always get what's happening outside the city, which is why I try to have friends and family and people I talk to who are outside the city to make sure that I can shine a light on me. Law enforcement, I'm accustomed to New York City. 40,000 policemen in New York City, right? I'm accustomed to people just accepting things like you can't have 10 people in your house. That's our other rule. You can't have more than 10 people in your house. And we're like, okay.
Have you ever been stopped and frisked, or are you white enough that doesn't really happen?
No. Whenever I go to the city, I wear a suit. I'm good. I'm good.
Be half white, wear a suit, and stop.
You got it. You good. You good. Yes. That's the answer. If I had a hoodie on,
all bets are off.
Exactly. Wear a suit, you're fine. So yes, it's totally, yeah. But I guess to your earlier point, though, I mean, the idea that people are going to fight back is slim. They'll just leave. That's what usually happens in New York City. They tend to not fight back. They tend to just leave. That's the norm in New York City. And my fear is more and more are going to leave because the opportunity is not going to be there anymore, right? All the people who were going to grow are not. The thing that this COVID crisis has exacerbated, and COVID didn't exacerbate this, the government response is what exacerbated this, is right. That we were already starting to be able to do things like work from home and things like that. That was already happening. Now that's just exploding to where now you don't have the glory of New York City again was, I'm sorry, you're talking about New York, so I'm gonna pump my city, right? Yeah. So the glory that was New York was that you had 16 million to 20 million people in the metro area. So much talent there. So many clients and customers there. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. But now when you move so much to internet, so much to Zoom, so much to StreamYard, so much out of that, there's no requirement to be in New York City anymore to still get that talent and to still work together and even to get those customers. So the advantage that New York City had has been exacerbated to be, you know what? Not such a big deal. And if I don't have to hire talent in New York City anymore, I don't have to pay them 6 figures anymore.
Yeah.
And that was the huge opportunity. You could move to New York City and literally within 3 weeks be making $95,000 a year. That was a thing that could happen easily in New York City. Well, because I had to pay you that. Because you want to get, you want to rent a 1-bedroom in Manhattan. It's $2,000 a month to rent a 1-bedroom in Manhattan. Of course you got to pay guy $90,000 a year. He can't survive without it. Of course, right? Coffee's $7, right? The other day we went to the store to buy organic eggs for a dozen. $7 for a dozen eggs. Yeah, you got to make $95,000 a year in this city, or you can't survive. Correct.
All right, Larry. Given how much you clearly hate New York City, when are you going to move to Arizona?
I'm still here. I'm still fighting, man.
I gotta say,
code of conduct, right? You got to fight till you got no ammo. I still got ammo.
Oh man, that's a gruesome metaphor. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. And for those of you who don't know, Larry is also a former jarhead who is better now. I
like that. Better now.
I think you were also tagged in the tweet this morning that got me cued into the Justin Amash Dan Crenshaw debate. Did you see that?
Yep, I was tagged.
Just quick aside here, because we've seen when I saw this from Dan Crenshaw, I was like, really, this is how low your standard of intellectual integrity is. But it seems like he is now auditioning or maybe completing his audition to be the spokesperson for the military-industrial complex. CJ's got this up on stage. And this is, I think, the last one from Crenshaw in the exchange with Amash. Immoral, based on my friends risking their lives, understand a basic truth that you refuse to. This enemy wants to kill us. Protecting America's flank is indeed moral, a basic duty of government, and yes, dangerous. Thankfully, we have people willing to take that risk when you won't. We're seeing similar pandering, propaganda, emotional manipulation from people like Mitch McConnell now in response to Trump with his, I hate to be pessimistic, but it's a bullshit fake a symbolic drawdown than a real troop or policy change in Iraq and Afghanistan. What's your response? I hate to say as a veteran, because I like to say, Ron Paul, you don't have to go to Iraq to read the Constitution. You don't have to see. You don't have to be a trigger puller to realize that killing for politicians is wrong. But we are in a unique position as veterans, unfortunately, to speak to people who need that appeal to authority or need to hear from warriors about why these wars are bullshit. Larry, do you have a response to those general propaganda, emotional statements?
It's the norm, right? I mean, it really is the norm. There are two things happening together. And it's the only reason why it's so difficult is because of the Georgia elections coming up here. The Republican Party would have already ditched Trump weeks ago. They would have already ditched him, but they can't because they really care about the Georgia elections. And there are too many people in the Republican Party who really openly love and support Trump, and they will vote for him and support him. Even if he loses the election, they lost the election, they don't care. They're going to vote for him. Absolutely. And they know that. So if Mitch and the boys turn on Trump, those people may not show up in Georgia in January, was it 3rd or 4th, whatever that election is. They won't show up. They don't show up. Georgia gets 2 Democratic senators. They do not want that. That will change the Senate. That will give Biden the Senate. That will Mitch McConnell will lose his job. They can't have that. So that's the only reason why they're playing any games with Trump at all. They don't care. Those people.
Hold on, Larry. Yeah, literally, you've introduced an angle that I hadn't really considered in this, but I want to step back. There's a bigger conflict within the Republican Party. Again, one of these issues where you go, libertarians are pulling the old parties in our direction, whether they like it or not. They can't justify war and invasions and occupations and all the militarism the way they used to be able to. And so Donald Trump was truly anti-interventionist in his populist messaging and his branding and pretty consistent in that. And I got to at least give him credit for having not escalated militarism in any meaningful way over his presidency, right? People say, well, Trump is the most libertarian president we've ever had because they get ever so slightly more libertarian, less vicious statist over time. Yes, Trump is still wicked, evil, big government statist who grew it under his administration. But yeah, he's not some vicious escalation. And in that sense, I can celebrate that. But now what we have is what you have illuminated here is that there is an internal dilemma within the Republican Party.
Yep.
To win in Georgia, does the Republican Party put forward its anti-interventionist side or its hawkish side? What's the strategic analysis there, Larry?
There isn't. There's an enemy. That's all that matters, right? Remember, the war is not meant to be won. It's meant to continue forever, right? That's the goal, right? We remember, isn't Al Qaeda our enemy? Oh, wait a minute, Saddam Hussein. Oh, wait, ISIS. Wait, who? What? Gaddafi? Which one's our enemy? I forgot. Right? It's Iran. That's who it is. Iran. That's right. Yes. But whatever. Right? It's whomever it is. It's always a war. So the goal is simply to create an enemy, a distraction. The goal of the Democratic Party has a similar problem, and that's the AOC and Bernie's of the world. They now want their cut. Right? They gave in and said, Biden, fine. We're behind you. Now where's our cut? We got a cut coming too. And Biden's like, Ayo, what? Who are you? But Bernie. I got a buddy named Bernie. I don't know who you are. So Biden's already all of a sudden forgot these guys. That's where he's playing right now. He's like, I cannot wait to get Susan Rice back in. Fire up the war machine. We are ready to go. That's what Biden's thinking, right? Now, everybody knows that's true. McConnell doesn't actually care either way about that. He's fine bombing people as long as they're brown. He doesn't care. He'll bomb them. He's fine. Just as long as he stays in power. That's all he cares about. He didn't care about Trump bombing people or not. Trump didn't care. Trump didn't want to bomb people, right? Trump was trying to be the deal maker in the Middle East, right? That's what he was trying to do. It didn't work out the way he wanted to make it work out. So now he'll withdraw troops. That's his thing. That's his legacy. So the point I'm going to bring up here is that the fight is within the Republican Party twofold. One, to hold on to Trump reporters until the Georgia election. And then the second thing, who will now run the Republican Party? Because while Trump will still have influence, the odds are he's not going to be able to have the same amount of power. He's not the president anymore. So he's going to become more of the kingmaker versus the king. Right. So they're trying to make sure they stay good enough on his side, but then who's going to be the actual king? So that's the fight they're having there. Now, the Democrats don't want to have to fight because there's a chance. It's a small chance, but if Biden's bad enough to his own lefties in the Democrat Party, Democrats will break off. They'll bring in the Socialist Party, the Green Party, and they'll create an actual party, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. That right now, the DSA is actually just a wing of the Democratic Party right now. That's what it is. And the Socialists are a wing of the Green Party right now. But if Biden doesn't, if he's like, I don't care about you lefties, I don't care at all, they'll break off and they'll create their own party because they want to make things change. They want socialism. They want that desperately. And a lot of mainstream Democrats don't want that. So they'll break off. And the Republican Party has a problem too. If they completely diss Trump, does Trump create his own group or party or media empire or creation? Does he somehow merge Newsmax and OAN to create a more populist Republican side? Maybe.
Or can he maintain his base as a voting bloc of a meaningful political threat? And I can't argue with him having that,
Yes.
certainly right now. But it came so fast, and I think it could go just as fast. But, Larry, I want to go back to this question about the fear porn of militarist propaganda that we're getting from the Crenshaws and the McConnells right now. When you hear, and this is more of like a candidate kind of messaging question, but also, a deeper issue, almost spiritual question for someone who was like me, especially when you join the Marines, every Marine a rifleman. You can join the Air Force or, the Coast Guard and hope you're just going to be a cook somewhere and never, but not every Marine a rifleman,
Absolutely.
You did that. You were there. You had your life on the line. When you hear a civilian or a non-politician just sort of unwittingly repeating this kind of propaganda, like we saw from Crenshaw this morning, what's your response?
Yeah, as a general rule, I don't try to change their mind because I probably can't, right? The odds are I try to fight battles that I can win, and I try to just influence people to the best of my ability. As a general rule, when someone's like, yeah, they're out to kill us or whatever the case may be, I tend to ask questions. I tend to go, okay, who do you think is out to kill us? Or who are we fighting today? Or wouldn't it be better if we could be friends? Or something like that. And I'll try to do things like, I'll do the Lincoln quote. Look, if I make my enemy my friend, I've destroyed my enemy. So how about we do that instead?
Yeah, no, that's great. That is a really brilliant answer. And Larry, I think one of the better ways to play the veterans card, frankly, is when you're asking people these questions who are, and one of the things that really breaks my heart about seeing this from someone like Crenshaw, who's a veteran and an actual combat veteran, is that they're not representative of the majority of the veterans community, not even close. But they people like Pete Hegseth, more my generation, they were just really obnoxiously arrogant, pro-military, pro-war, pro-authority. I hate to resort to name calling, but bootlicker, really is an appropriate term for a lot of the people who have that mentality. And they don't represent the majority of the military. They don't represent. Even when I was in, you would hear these rah-rah speeches, and most of us were sitting in the back going like, all right, whatever, let's go back to doing our thing. And it really is a disgusting way that the American people are taking advantage of to serve militarism. Well, you weren't there, How many veterans does it take to screw in a light bulb? You wouldn't know. You weren't there, man. So you better go with the guys like Dan Crenshaw and Pete Hegseth and these pro-military veterans.
There is a very human side to this, though, and the human side is they have to validate their bad behavior. They have to validate what they've done and how they've acted. They have to validate these things, right? For them to go back, they would have to say to themselves, holy crap, I was wrong, and what I said was wrong. And this is what guys like you and I have done. We've gone through the 12-step AA. We've gone through that already, right? Right. I've told people that I used to wear the shirt that said, kill them all, let God show them out when I was 19 years old. I thought that was right. And one of the reasons why I thought it was right was because life was easy. When it was very simple, black and white, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, and they is whoever Ronald Reagan tells me, because that was my first commander-in-chief. So, yeah, so when Ronald Reagan says they're the bad guys, they're the bad guys. Why? Because he said so. Okay, great. We're authorized to kill them. Why? Because they're bad guys. Life is easy. Now I wear the shirt that says illegal isn't always wrong. That's a very different shirt that I wear now. Very different shirt that I wear than the one that I wore when I was 19. And I had to come to grips with that. You did too. And so did many libertarians who are veterans. It's a hard thing for them to do. And to be forward, for many of them, there's no safe space for them. There's no place for them to go. What happens when Crenshaw says all of a sudden, you know what? God, what was I thinking? I was wrong. Well, he loses his seat. He gets primaried. He's gone. His friends abandon him. There's no book or TV deal for him. What'd you do? Go buy a franchise McDonald's and run that? I mean, what does he do?
Larry,
There's no safe place for him.
Yeah, no, Larry, I'm really glad that you bring it up in those terms. And there is something that I think we have gone through that is an admission of guilt. And for people like me and Dan, it has to come down to, we were unwitting accessories to a war crime by Christian just war theory, by basic human ethics, by international law. There's no way around it. And it kind of, I think about this particularly with someone like Pete Hegseth, who it seems to be motivated by a deep-seated desire to rationalize or justify horrifically immoral things that we were a part of. And it's nice to be able to stay in that denial, but I think we are a lot happier to be able to see it from our perspective. And Larry, there's one other really exciting piece of good news that I have to share, is that we recently secured seed funding for the Homefront Battle Buddies project. And Homefront Battle Buddies was what we call the peer support group that I organized with Iraq Veterans Against the War when we lived in DC. But
Nice.
now we want to bring it back with retreats and an online community, and really a way for veterans to come together who are looking for an alternative to seek treatment for government. Because, for me, it was a little brown bag, 5 prescriptions, 3 of them had suicide as a side effect.
Right.
For a lot of dudes, it's when they start going through that process, you see there's no safe space. In a sense, we're creating a safe space for veterans who want to seek treatment outside of the government channels, because, confessing to war crimes in therapy is probably going to be more effective for you when you don't have to worry about getting arrested or reported or judged or prescribed suicide-inducing prescriptions.
Yes.
So we really are creating that alternative space, and I hope you can be involved. And I would want to remind anybody that if you want to reach out to me, we have Stephen McClure, Navy, Bronze Star, Afghanistan combat veteran, heading up this project. You can email me and we'll pass it on to him. Just getting this organized, we need help with web organization and logistics and all sorts of stuff. Eventually providing spaces with retreats. And this is actually the perfect segue back to where I want to go with you with the election here, and to take questions from the audience. But for a lot of veterans committing suicide today, still 22, number that fluctuates shockingly little.
That's the odd thing.
Definitely very underreported, if anything, because there are a lot of veterans who drink until they wrap their car around a tree, and that's a kind of suicide as well. We need the warrior class to step back up and realize that, wars are when governments tell you who the enemy is. Revolutions are when you figure it out for yourself. And if the troops defended freedom, we'd be attacking the government, at least in a metaphorical, intellectual.
I like that. FBI, if you're listening, he means metaphorical.
Yes,
FBI, he means metaphorical. Yes.
And yes, but as warriors, to step up and confront and have the courage to confront the evil that we were once a part of. But with cannabis legalization sweeping the country now, I think we came to a pretty exciting turning point. Also, for veterans, opening up in many ways the possibility of therapy with psilocybin mushrooms and MDMA in very controlled, supervised therapeutic settings as real cures for PTSD. It's a pretty exciting time. So, Larry, we are going to take. So, Larry, I'm going to ask just anything you want to comment on any of that, of course, or the election in general.
Yeah, let me just deal with those.
Drugs being the big winner, perhaps. But I want to turn, after this one last question for me, the rest of this interview over to our audience and our Producers Club. I know we have some Producer Club questions, so you want to get your questions in either in comments on wherever you're watching this live or in the Producers Club. After this one, we're going to turn to y'all, and Comment Jim Freedom is going to get those up on stage. By the way, Larry, I love that our team here, we have our co-host and our producer are also military veterans.
Nice.
For what that's worth. But to the election, Larry, and again, anything you want to say to comment on all that, drugs being the big winner, the opportunities for veterans coming out of this, and everybody dealing with mental health issues that are going to be alleviated by conscientious positive drug use. But the big question I want to ask is looking at Jo Jorgensen and the outcome. I don't believe it. I don't fucking buy it. 1.2% of the popular vote, based on even how they admitted that she was polling before that, based on what we saw in 2016. And I don't mean to be a blind, optimistic cheerleader for the Libertarian Party, but there's no way she only got 1.2%. There's no way it wasn't at least like 2 or 3 times that. It could have been as high as 8 or 10%. As we see a new kind of cheating, when Republicans and Democrats say they're cheating, they stole the election, for once they're both right, and they're all a bunch of lying, whatever. But they defend each other's votes or their own votes, but there's no one there to defend the vote total for Jorgensen. How do you think that manipulation affected her total or the Libertarian Party in general in 2020?
Holy crap, man, you threw a lot at me. Okay, let me try to unpack it. All right.
Take your time.
First piece on the veteran piece with suicides. There's another piece that we don't always know, and that is there are many ways in business that we don't check if the person's a veteran. There's no box to check, right? When you come on to your HR. One of the things I've talked about often when I do training and coaching when it comes to large organizations, I ask is, do you have a veterans affinity group, right? Do you have one of those groups that veterans can get together? As you know, over 50% of all veterans leave their first job within their first year. It's a common thing. Keeping a job is very hard for veterans. But one of the reasons is they don't understand how to make that transition from veteran to regular everyday civilian. I struggled too, and I did this in the 80s and 90s, and I still struggled back then. Now it's even harder, right? And I'm not a combat vet. Combat vets struggle even more. I remember doing work. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just to underscore this for people who might not understand, it's not, oh, well, you're a combat vet, you might have PTSD and we need to be no, it's that there's a mentality that you get in the command and control environment that you have to transition out of. If you've been to combat, maybe it's ingrained in a different way, but I didn't know that statistic. What was it? 50% leaving jobs?
Of veterans leave their first job within a year because they can't transition. But if you had a veterans affinity group, you got a guy or gal who survived in this joint for 3 years. They go, Adam, sit down. Let me tell you how stuff works. Let me. I know you feel that.
Just creating an institutional culture for veterans and for everybody else, where veterans are comfortable saying, "Oh shit, sorry, I went all like command and control. I did my bad. I didn't mean it. I'm trying to be. No offense. It's just my veteran habit speaking." And if we just got to even that level of comfort and acceptance, you'd alleviate a lot of that, right?
Absolutely. So a lot, knowing that also means that in other areas, there's no checkbox for veteran. So do we actually know how many veterans are committing suicide? We probably don't. The number is higher than 22. Whatever that number is, it's higher than that because a lot of ways there's no place to check a box. So there's no way to know. So that was my point of this entire thing, right? There is an issue with suicide that we haven't fixed. And a lot of it is institutional that we can repair with simple changes, right? Things like having if you go to any large organization, there is without question a women's affinity group. There's a Black and or Hispanic affinities group. There's a gay and or lesbian affinity group. There's definitely these different affinity groups within large organizations, but not veterans. Now more, but I'm back 10 years doing this. I've been doing this 10, 15 years. So when I first started doing it, it didn't exist ever. Now more and more of them are starting to exist, right? So that's part of the situation. So I know that was kind of off, but that's one piece. But it's a second piece which goes to the safe space piece you brought up in the suicide piece. It's difficult for a vet to change their mindset when their society tells them they're supposed to be a strong warrior. And they're supposed to, be happy about beating people up or fighting or being strong or fighting the enemy. When your peer group tells you, you're a Marine, Adam, you know how to kill people and blah, 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 right? When they tell you that, it's hard. I'm not saying impossible, but it's difficult for a person, particularly when they come back from the military and now they're in an environment where they're no longer feeling comfortable in that environment. So they're uncomfortable already. And now I've got a social circle telling me, you're the killer. Tell us how you killed people. When they're doing that kind of thing, it's difficult to go, dude, I'm not happy about that. And this even happened after Vietnam. We see it in the movie The Deer Hunter, right? In the movie The Deer Hunter, if everybody remembers the beginning of that movie, if you remember 70s, this is from Vietnam, it's from the 70s. When the guy comes back, they have a big party for him. Come on back, welcome home. The guy skips out in his own party because he can't handle it. It doesn't work for him. We talked about these problems 40 or 50 years ago. They're still happening now. And the changes we've made are minimal because we're so worried about being the let's bomb people because we're righteous, not let's take care of the people to come back who we've told to go bomb and kill people. So I think that's really an issue. So I want to cover those two pieces.
Yeah, well,
Now-
I mean, I'm inclined to like make the appeal to women here, as I've done before, like about bad cops. Like, you want a less vicious police state? Stop sleeping with asshole cops. Like,
Yes.
you know, like you want a more peaceful world? Stop blowing smoke up people's butts for enlisting in the military and passing out blowjobs like candy. It's not cool to glorify militarism, and there is. With that perversion of masculinity, there's a perversion of the divine feminine to say, you know, worship soldiers instead of real warriors. But you're right that that's kind of looking at it superficially. But yeah, there's a deeper element to this.
Absolutely.
In terms of reclaiming what it means to be a warrior and getting really deep in that.
So those are those two pieces you brought up. Now the idea you brought up, the idea of drugs winning the war on drugs. Absolutely. Drugs won a long time ago. Now they won at the ballot box, right? They won in the streets years ago. Now they've actually moved to the ballot box and they're actually winning. I completely agree. And I think that's not just going to help veterans. It will, but I think it's going to help people in general. All the people who we think are downtrodden, insert your definition of that. Almost all of them get stuck in the black market because the mainstream won't accept them, whoever these downtrodden are, whether they're literally trans people who don't feel accepted and they wind up putting themselves into the sex trade, right? That's one set. Or whether it's a veteran who can't get his act together or her act together because they can't function in society, they don't have the support structure required to make that happen, or the maturity level because they're only 21 years old. So they have none of those things to handle that. Whether it's someone who's a black youth who's in a bad neighborhood, insert the person. Whether it's a white guy who's over 50 who's no longer employable because he had a job for 20 years and now his factory went under and he doesn't know anything else and no one will hire him because they think he's crazy because he's over 50 and they'll never hire him again. So now he's on drugs. Insert downtrodden person you want. This is going to help all of them. You are 100% correct. The idea of cannabis now being more and more legal, psychedelics being more and more legal, is nothing but going to help all of those people. I completely agree.
So to the big question here, before we get to our, we have some great ones piling up from the Producers Club. How much was stolen from the Jorgensen vote count? What do you think her actual percentage?
None. She got 1.1%. None. She was polling at about 4%, 3 to 4%. Prior to the election. That's what she was. And third party candidates almost always get half of what they poll. That's what they do. They get half of what they poll. Why? Because the people who say they're going to vote for the third party aren't really sure. They're actually former Democrats, Republicans, and they walk into that place and go, oh, you know what? I said I was going to vote Libertarian, but I'm a Democrat. Click.
You should hold on a second, Larry. Because I don't want to dispute the observable fact here.
Please.
That you point out, which is that generally third-party libertarian candidates poll twice what their final score is.
Usually. Could
that just be that's what their consistent average of being able to steal from us is? Could it just be that mythology that you created is a justification for what they want you to believe? Now, and if that's the case,
maybe
I would still be on the conservative end of my estimate with Jorgensen that. She probably got something like 2.5%, right? That was her
possible. I mean, if there is, but the problem is here, and this is the Jorgensen campaign struggled from many things that we always struggle from. The first one was thinking that we were going to get in debates. I kept saying that. You were there when I was saying it, Adam. We're not getting debates. It's not going to happen. It's a fantasy. Stop pretending that's going to happen. I know I did it in my state. When the way to get in debates is to be popular and exciting. I was popular and exciting in my state, and I got in debates. I did. And what happened? My governor didn't show. So none of my debates that I came in and I won, none of them got televised. If Jorgensen had won her lawsuit or whatever and got into debates, Trump doesn't show up. There's no debate. It doesn't matter. So lawsuit irrelevant. It's all irrelevant. All that matters is, do people want to see her? Because debates are about only one thing: ad revenue. That's what they're about. Can you draw ad revenue?
Well, also controlling the. It's. I think the debate. Not that that's not part of it, but they're more about controlling the general conversation, right? It's about manipulating the. You think it's just about ad revenue?
100%.
There's no political side of this.
Not at all. They gave Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, if you remember, in the beginning of 2016, they gave them town halls. Why?
Okay, so you're bigger because they had the traction, right? Because it was
they were testing to see if they had traction, and if it was a huge hit, then they put them in debates.
And they knew that they could sell for ratings, at least to justify the time, to some Republican governors that had that appearance of credibility and traction.
Yes.
So then let me shift gears for a second. Before, again, we have some great questions piling up here, but this is kind of getting to that. If your case for Jorgensen is not just that it was, she could have had 10 points stolen from her, and I don't think anybody in our camp has been fantasy indulging, trying to say, oh, Jorgensen really won and it was stolen from her. No, but she definitely got more than they're admitting to in the votes, because there's no one there to defend.
I don't buy it.
The libertarian vote count.
I don't buy it, Adam.
But but
it wasn't an exciting campaign. That was the other thing. It was not an exciting campaign. It just wasn't exciting.
So let me transition to that then, in terms of what wisdom we can glean from your perspective, and that why did Jorgensen fail to get the traction that we would have hoped for?
She's not exciting, right? I'm not trying to insult. She was not exciting. People don't go, oh my God, it's Jorgensen. She's not exciting. And the entire campaign had no policy. There's no policy. The entire campaign was libertarian rhetoric, history lessons, and our platform.
Yeah. That's
not policy. That doesn't move people except libertarians. And the problem with libertarians is we're jerks. And if we don't get exactly what we want, we go off online, attack, and blah, blah, blah. So, look, how do I know this, right? Oh, Larry, you're talking trash. Why didn't you run? The reason why, and I hear this all the time, whenever I say this, why didn't you run, Larry? Because I couldn't have done any better, so I didn't run. That's the point. If I thought I could have done better, then I would have run so I could do better. I didn't believe I couldn't have the time or the money or the energy to do it, so I didn't run. If I thought I had the time and energy, I would have. But we didn't. And what happened was we had two sides of our party. And you saw it, Adam, you were there. You saw it. It was two sides of our party. We had the left side saying, we're left and the right's terrible, and the right going, we're right and the left's terrible, both sides and the other. I told them both, you're not going to win. You've played the Democrat-Republican Party, so 40% is the max for either of you because the other won't vote for you. So we're doomed to get our second choice. That's what we got. I told Dave Smith this months before the election, before the nomination. He goes, oh, Hornberger's going to win. I said, no way. I said, whoever's going to win is the safest choice. That's who we pick. We pick the safest choice. Jorgensen was the safest choice. If Armstrong was running, it might have been him. He was also a safe choice. So either Armstrong or Jorgensen, I think, was destined to win this thing because the two sides weren't going to vote for each other. The Vermin Supreme people weren't going to vote for Hornberger. The Hornberger people weren't going to vote for Vermin Supreme. So what does that mean? We get number two.
I got to say, I was a little disappointed to see that this year the conversation was more influenced by the left-right spectrum than what's smart strategy for the LP.
And we were worried about things like we need a unity ticket. Who cares about a unity ticket?
It makes me wish we were debating radicalism versus pragmatism. That bullshit argument has so much more substance to it than this left-right nonsense.
Yes, I agree completely.
The Libertarian Party. So, Larry, then to all of those delegates who voted based on, oh, well, let's put up a woman against, two predatory men and really offensive, toxic, masculine figures with Trump and Biden. Let's go with someone safe. I was actually pretty encouraged with Jorgensen that we got someone who was consistently principled, and I was excited about that. But I recognize that most people aren't excited by the same things as I am.
If you remember when we talked about this, I was asking you why you used to run for VP. I was asking you that question. I was like, "What? Do you really want to be part of this thing?" Jorgens is a teacher. She doesn't know how to control an audience. She doesn't have to. The audience is captured. She doesn't know how to. I know that I know teachers. And I said this. I did a video on this before the election saying if you pick an academic, either Hornberger or Jorgensen, you're going to get someone who doesn't speak well because they don't have to capture an audience. Their audience is already in prison. So they talk to their audience. And they're by default going to talk above people. They're going to give history lessons. It's who they are. That's what we're going to get. That's what we got.
Okay, well, Larry, the question I want to ask dovetails nicely with our first one from the Producers Club from Brad, who writes, what suggestions would you give to keep the momentum for the liberty movement going, even though the election is over? And I would just add to that then, for those Libertarian National delegates who nominated someone based on safety or identity politics, what's your message looking forward to 24?
I literally did a video on this. And if you go to my Sharp Way YouTube page, the video is right there. It's a message for Libertarian Future. And I put out there, I believe there are six criteria that should not be put in writing, meaning as in a change to our bylaws, nothing like but that delegates should be looking at. 6 different things that people should be looking at in selecting our president. 1, can they raise money? Have they built a team before the nomination? If they go, well, I'm waiting for the nomination, in my view, and this is my opinion only, you're disqualified. Can you quit your job and do this full time? You can't do that? You're disqualified. But Larry, I got a job. Don't run for president then. Do something else. That's fine. Right? Being principled is assumed in my view. That's assumed in my view. Right? That's automatically assumed in my view. But all the other things are what matter. Right? Can you raise money? Have you already raised 6 figures before you get to the nomination? Have you already built a team before you got to the nomination? Do you already have a press reel before you get to the nomination? Right? With those things, very few people could. Do you actually have a policy team before we get to the nomination? If you say no, can you quit and work full time and do this full time before we get to the nomination? With those criteria, only about 3 or 4 people could have actually been nominated. You, Justin Amash, Vermin Supreme, and Ken Armstrong. That's about all we had that fit that criteria. That's about it.
Well, and one other thing I would hope is that what made our campaign unique in this, and again, making it as much not about me as possible. It really is the line in the sand of localization. And I would suggest that, in this, in your standard of something exciting, you have to be offering the American people a meaningful alternative as opposed to, I'm going to be a better president, and the idea of resigning and bankrupting and localizing the federal government. I don't want to say that's it. That's the only thing that meets this criteria. But it's the only thing I've really heard that has the potential to do that and say, look, America, we need to try something fundamentally different. How about localization? I
think you got to add 2 more, right? You also have to grad. Judge Jim Gray had that too, and so did Justin Amash. They had the opportunity to grow and do things. Had a press reel, had raised money, had a team, all those things. Add on top of that, when I said policy team, is what you just talked about. You got to have policy, right? Is that what you just talked about? You have policy. Yeah. And that's why I said you had that. You already had localization as a policy. You actually had policy. So the Vermin Supreme. So did Judge Jim Gray. So many libertarians hated his policy, but he had policy, right?
Vermin Supreme's best policy was, we're going to take your guns and give you better guns.
There we go. But at least there was policy there, right? So I think localization can work. It's not a bad policy at all, right? I support localization all the time. It's one of the things I talked about when I ran for governor, right? The idea of letting counties be counties, right? That concept. But localization is so difficult because of what we've done. And I'll give you an example in New York. I'm assuming it's the same way in Arizona. If you have local state senators, they don't come from a county. They come from a gerrymandered district that's all through the counties. Well, then how can a county have any kind of autonomy? It can't, right? Then look at my assembly. Does that come from, say, each one gets 2 or 3 people from the assembly or whatever case, from a county? No, that's also another gerrymandered district that has 3, 4, 5, 6 counties in it. Well, how can a county have any autonomy? How can a county have any power as a local entity?
Hey, local autonomy, Larry, that would defeat the entire purpose of government, right? Concentrating power and wealth in the hands of the few. And you know, I want to point out something about Larry that I love in the humility that he brings to being a candidate, and what he said about, like, you know, that you couldn't have done better than Jorgensen. But I think that a big part of what you're doing, and I want to encourage people to support you with the Sharp Way and all of your other activism endeavors, is to, like, what I'm doing to get ready for 2024, to be, if I'm going to run again in 24, and I plan to, I've told my supporters, like, hey, as long as the sport keeps growing, and you want this message represented the way that I'm offering politics, I'll keep running. But in order to make that offer to the Libertarian Party as a serious potential candidate for 24, I have to show, as I feel like I've been doing, but, you know, can always be better, that localization can be exciting, that what I'm offering can be exciting, that, you know, hey, if Texas secedes because Biden's president, hey, we better get the rest of the country on board before it all falls apart.
Yeah, but Crenshaw might become the governor. That's a problem.
Now, we have a question from another New Yorker, former New Yorker, like you, but he's better now. Peter Yapel, you know, moved to Arizona. He used to be from New York, but he's better now. He moved to rural Arizona and is enjoying a lot more freedom as a result. Peter asks, do you believe the party is as unified as we need it to be to finally make a real difference in 22 or 24? If not, how do we find a way to send out a clear and unified message to not seem as the anything goes party that some are afraid of?
No, we're not unified, but I don't think we need to be forward with you. I don't think it's required right now, right? In the coming years, all of the elections really are going to be more local. So all I need is for county and state parties to be unified enough to get behind either issues and or candidates. Not just candidates. I love candidates. I'm all about candidates. But to be forward, I say often, our movement isn't only about candidates. Candidates is one part of our movement, and an important part. But everything else that we do, from ballot initiatives to changing taxes, to changing policy, to killing laws, to spotlighting corruption, these are all important things that our movement does. Candidates is one part. When it comes to unifying, sadly for most of us, candidates are the easiest way to do that, right? So if you have a good candidate, people get behind them, and they go, well, yeah, I don't like that Adam guy, but we're both behind that other guy, Jim Smith. Jim Smith's great, so I'm going to hang out with Adam because I like Jim Smith.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out there are a lot of forces that want to keep us from that unity. There's a lot, and I think Larry's general attitude here is really important for the party to embrace, and that and I know this from my personal experience, because I think I got lied to about Larry, and this is just our personal backstory as friends and fellow activists, within the movement and the LP, that I learned a lot from my experience with Larry, because I was lied to about him, and just a general
happened.
And just a general attitude.
It's over. Never happened.
Well, just this general, when you've been, I hope that less experienced activists in the party can accelerate this process of learning from those of us who have been around a little bit longer, just to know what to ignore.
Yeah.
And there's a by not ignoring the bullshit and the drama, we allow ourselves to be prone to manipulation. So real quick, Jim, any other comments that we want to get on screen? I think we covered the important ones from the Producers Club. Fina.
I want to say that's a very simple thing. Don't let people tell you who to hate. That's the number one thing to remember. And the reason why so many people get mad at me is because I won't hate the other. They want me to hate their guy. You got to hate that guy. I'm not going to hate him. Well, then you're not one of us. Okay, Larry Sharpe then doesn't get endorsed by any, if you notice, I didn't get endorsed by any caucus because I wouldn't hate the other. That was their mandate. You must hate the other. I won't hate the other. Therefore, we can't be with you, Larry. Sorry. That was it.
Yeah, no, brilliant perspective. Thank you, Larry. One more question from the audience. Our friend Fina Benoan from Hawaii.
Fina, how are you, my dear?
She asks, does Mr. Sharp have any intentions of running for office in 22 or 24? And if so, what office?
I'm strongly considering running for governor of New York in 2022. I'll see how much support I get beginning of next year. I'll make a decision by summer of next year if I'm going to run again. But I'm seriously considering that for 2022. For 2024, if the right person I think is going to be top of the ticket, the same thing I was saying in this one, I would consider a VP slot again. I would. I'm hoping someone who has the massive backing, like a Justin Amash, if he still stays populist in our party, and he still does that, I would consider something like that. So I'd consider a VP slot if I think the person is going to be able to make massive impact. If I don't see massive impact, I wouldn't run in 2024.
Excellent. So we've got your websites pulled up. We want to make sure that you got all the appropriate plugs, and I want to point out to everybody that if you appreciate Larry Sharp's voice the way that I do in this perspective and his messaging, everything that he brings to the party, and you want to see him as a representative on the ballot in 22 or 24 doing, because he's not the kind of guy who's going to do it.
That's it right there. A focus on Libertarian Party. That's literally the one I did it on. That's it right
there. All right.
Yeah.
There it is. So support him as an independent media producer, support him as part of his active and engaged audience, making these ideas exciting. This is the off season we're coming into now. People like Larry and I are looking ahead. I'm considering running for U.S. Congress here in Arizona. It's like New York, except we have more freedom. You should consider it, Larry. Again, Larry, so what can people do to support you, just to help get people excited about these ideas and put you in a better position for 2022?
Like, comment, and share all my stuff on social media. I'm on all the things. I'm on I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, YouTube. I have two different brands. One is The Sharp Way and one is Larry Sharp Libertarian. Larry Sharp Libertarian is a libertarian brand. That's what it is. Libertarian brand. I often have libertarians on. It's about libertarian things. The Sharp Way is not. The Sharp Way is actually more a brand that's about the middle way. It's about bringing people on who are not libertarians. If you watch any of my Larry Sharp Libertarian shows, it's almost always libertarian. If you watch my Sharp Way show, it's almost never libertarian. It's always someone who used to be or might be or a Democrat or Republican. It's someone who's not. And the goal is to be the recruiter, if that makes any sense, in the Sharp Way.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Any closing thoughts or anything else you want to say to make this feel complete, please?
Semper Fi, brother.
Raw. Oh man, that was one of the fantasies that we had going into 2020 for the presidential elections, that we'd see a Kokesh Sharp ticket and two Marines going to take that hill. All right, I lost the connection here for the Producers Club chat for a second, so thank you, CJ, for getting those sites up on screen for Larry. We've got just a couple minutes left in the program today. Let's go ahead and get Jim back up on screen here and check in with Jim, our Army veteran co-host. And I don't know, I guess when you have a good guest like Larry, we're gonna have to come back and catch up on headlines tomorrow. I had so many today. CJ's gonna be really pissed off. He's like, Adam, I pulled up all these freaking links. All you did is talk to Jim and Larry and cover one story. What's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to me? But I think that was the important story, to remind people of the the economic perspective of what we're facing with the second wave of government here. Jim, if I may, before we get to comments, just a couple ones to skim through. Security officials worry Israel and Saudi Arabia may see end of Trump as their chance to go to war with Iran. No. If you think Biden is any less a servant of the military-industrial complex, get over yourself. The Jerusalem Post has this: India, Israel, 30-second coronavirus test in very last stage. We had do you want to call my prick test the 30-second test? Because that's like how long it actually, I don't know. But why did it take so long? Jim, you can't be the only one going like this. This has been a thing since February, and you just now have the 30-second version of the test getting out there in the last day, just in time for the vaccine to get here.
Just in time for the second wave.
Yeah. Now we're getting tested here. Like I said, actually, this is a little update for Sam and I from yesterday. Is that we're getting tested by family member request for coming together for Thanksgiving and given our family member circumstances, totally reasonable. But it's a nightmare. It's trying to figure out, can you get tested here? Can you get tested there? We have an appointment yesterday, Tuesday, and we're in Seattle right now, Seattle area at least. The soonest appointment, major metro, and remember, Seattle used to be a hotspot because it's close to China. It's one of the closest parts of America to China, so it's very vulnerable to the China Wuhan virus. But Seattle was genuinely a hotspot not that long ago. I can't get there's no walk-in testing in this area. I had to make an appointment for 2 days ahead for me and Sam. Yesterday, Tuesday, we made an appointment for tomorrow, Thursday. That's where we're at. This headline I referenced earlier from The Guardian, UK music industry will halve in size, halve, as in be cut in half in size due to COVID. This is a headline not meant to be read out loud. But UK music industry will halve in size due to COVID, says report. Yeah, collapse of live sector. I mean, but the thing about the testing, sorry to go back, Jim, the fact that for most of this time we've had a 2-week turn. Oh, the test we're getting is a 3-day turnaround. Really?
That's ridiculous.
After you watched me test myself live on our Facebook months ago with a blood strip prick test, and you go, that's why can we not have nice things? Because government.
Well,
but then you go,
I would suggest that they increase the time to suggest validity. It's a more complex test. These are the legit tests. Those 30-second tests are not there. They can be falsified, or they're wrong, or they're blah blah blah. Our tests take 3 days because they're so good. They're so accurate.
No, and you know what, Jim? And this kind of makes sense. And scientifically, there might be some exceptions and whatever with this, but the longer you take, the more chance there is to get it wrong, actually, because you're going to have contamination. And one of the things about the instant test is you're taking the sample from your body directly to the test mechanism, getting a result. With the 14-day test that we've had most of this time, it's a swab in the nose. They put it in a vial. It's a drive-through. Like it's outside. Then it goes through this administrative shuffle where there's chances it just gets mixed up with other and the others, and there's so many. You can't look at anyway. The thing that people are looking at now. Another quick headline: DailyBeast.com. Delusional COVID truthers try to invade a hospital where this mom died too soon. And it's got the tag idiots here. This is like the, film your hospital thing. Now, I don't want to get there's some absurdities in this story, of course. But they said we have an inordinate amount of phone calls that we're receiving every day from the community wanting to know, is your ICU really full? And again, this is part of the danger when they have taken something that is real and can be manipulated one way or another. But I got to say, this film your hospital thing, especially in the second wave, I hope we see. They're going to be infiltrators in this, right? If you're one of the people profiting from coronaphobia altogether, and you go, oh my God, they're going to go film the hospitals. Well, let's send a crazy guy to film the hospitals and make them look really silly. It's going to happen naturally anyway, as crazy people are more likely to get swept in something like this. But I'm kind of hopeful that now there are going to be enough people, and I don't want to be seen as, I don't mind. Yeah, I'll be a film your hospital cheerleader. Do it respectfully, do it peacefully, do it non-confrontationally. But yeah, when you see claims of morgues and ICUs overflowing, let's get some boots on the ground journalists to put a check on this, and let's do it in a now that there's another reason to in this second wave, let's do it in a more measured and precise and respectful and respectable way. But yeah, let's keep calling them out on this. Jim, any comments about that? People like do you even know anybody who's died? And it's like, well, we all know somebody who's something, but
Yeah, we all know somebody whose doctor told them they had it, or whose doctor told them they died from it, or
Yeah,
with it, rather. But I mean, the bottom line is, how much can you trust? How much of the numbers can you trust?
not much.
We all know, not
Not
much,
much.
right? Yep. We're over
Any
time. Do
other
you have any
critical
good
comments?
news for us today? No,
Good
everybody was
news.
pretty happy with the interview. Peter Yapel was bouncing back and forth, I think, from the producers club to the Facebook chat.
Nice. Yeah, Larry's always a fun guest. We have a good way of interacting, bringing out the best in each other. But yeah, I mean, we got more headlines to catch up on. I mean, hypocrisy in California, mask mandates, and one of the headlines again, real quick, Cron.com, the Republican governors who are changing their tunes on masks. So at least for a while, and certainly in this transition, it looks like things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better. In California, Californians must mask up outside their homes under new expanded mandate. And what people are freaking out about in California, this next headline, Fox 11 obtains exclusive photos of Governor Newsom at French restaurant, allegedly not following COVID-19 protocols. And it's like, yeah, he actually apologized for this. But at some point you go, this is a scam. This is a racket. The people in charge don't like. You're Governor Newsom. If you wanted to throw a party where you could say, well, we broke the rules, but we made an exception because we made sure that everybody had a mask and was in a bubble and blah blah. No, but that's not even close. So this was a Napa dinner party, and totally not following, totally flaunting all of their own rules and regulations. And I think the hypocrisy hopefully can put a check. Like, again, how are they getting away with this? I guess there are enough Americans who are compulsive rule followers. So just to wrap this up, Jim, then before we get to the good news, any comments on our theme question for this episode about how many Americans really are just compulsive rule followers versus breakers? And now that we're all civil disobedient to some degree or another under COVID, is that affecting the mentality? I mean, and if we're just, are we just going along with it again, or did we not learn anything from the March, April shutdowns, and are we going to just be swamped by a second wave of government now? Are we going to be so goddamn un-American as to fall for this again?
Well, no, I haven't seen any answers giving any percentages or opinions to that very specific question. But I mean, look at the guy who's giving the orders isn't even following them. So that helps you understand how many people in America. But the most important thing about the Newsom thing and his restaurant thing, you have to notice that the people in authority, if this were actually a health threat, if this were a threat, the people that were making these rules would actually be following them. If they were, things like this prove beyond a doubt that they're not afraid. They're going on as life is normal. They are not worried about a single thing, yet they are going on TV and acting as if this is a major threat that we are all killing each other's grandmas over, when obviously we're not, because they're acting as if things are normal. And if it was a real health threat, like I said, the high authorities would be acting a lot differently than they are.
Yeah, Jim, thank you for pointing that out, because I think for a lot of us, we kind of take it for granted. If I can try to boil it down even further, the people in positions of authority who are not following their own guidelines on corona have access to the best data analysis, scientific information about the virus, and what they are doing in their personal lives and the decisions that they make for their health exposure should be something that we follow and pay attention to more than what they're telling us to do, especially when those things are in contradiction to each other and their messages, do as I say, not as I do. Well, why are you doing something different from what you're saying? I'm going to go with, you have better access to information than I do, because I know you've been keeping information from me, and now I get to see this. And it's funny, I mentioned this to my mom yesterday, and she was like, did you see the thing about Pelosi in the salon? And it was like, Yeah, those kinds of moments of hypocrisy do stick with people. I hope the American people can really internalize that and learn the lessons and stop reelecting idiots. And I don't say idiots; they're assholes. They're not idiots. They know what they're doing. All right, Jim. Thank you so much for that. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Check in with audience, and as CJ is saying in the Producers Club, we're gonna have to have a tab clearing session soon. I agree. So to the goodnewsnetwork.org for this day in history. It was 155 years ago today. Mark Twain's first successful short story, Jim Smiley and His Jumping Frog, was published in the New York Saturday Press. His first great success as a writer, which brought him national attention. Yes, dear. And apparently, it was a repurposed, re-owned, retreaded story, as my wife is pointing out here. That's in here, babe. It says in the story, the narrator retells a story he heard from a bartender about the gambler Jim Smiley. Quote: If he even seen a straddle bug start to go anywhere, he would bet you how long it would take him to get to wherever he was going. If you took him up, he would follow that straddle bug to Mexico. Yeah. The story was developed further as the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, which was also the title story of Twain's first book. All right. The more good news on this day was on this day in 1883, the 5 standard continental time zones were instituted by U.S. and Canadian railroads to end the confusion of thousands of local times. Now, this is actually a really good piece of good news because it reminds us that even though government today claims to be able to control the time through daylight saving, resulting in a surge in suicides every year, it was the railroads that came together to standardize time zones on the continent. So, yeah, we didn't need government to control the time or to build consensus. In fact, when it comes to building consensus, the only thing governments can do is force you into it, not build a legitimate one by consent. You see how those words kind of go together? Consent, consensus. Mickey Mouse, on this day in 1928, first appeared on the big screen in the first Disney production with synchronized sound, the animated film Steamboat Willie, starring a cartoon mouse drawn and voiced by animator Walt Disney, which eventually became the company's famous mascot. And I can't stop thinking about bats and pangolins in the South Park Pandemic Special. If you haven't seen it yet, check out the South Park Pandemic Special. Watched it with Sam and Mom yesterday. On this day in 1918, Latvia declared its independence from Russia. On the happy 52nd birthday to screenwriter and actor Owen Wilson. Happy birthday. On this day in 1984, the Soviet Union worked with the U.S. to deliver 8 shipments of American wheat to Ethiopia during the famine. Sad that happens through government. Good news that it happens. On this day in 1989, 50,000 Bulgarians took to the streets demanding political reform. On this day in 1991, Terry White, a Christian who was kidnapped after negotiating the release of other British hostages, was finally released by the Islamic Jihad organization after 1,763 days, the first 4 years of which were spent in solitary confinement. Islamic Jihad organization. Remember what they tried to get us to be afraid of in 1991? The terrorists of the 90s.
Only thing you want to hear is about
Team America. Go Team America. Fuck yeah! On this day in 1993, South Africa's 21 political parties approved a new constitution. Good or bad, I don't know. Certainly better than apartheid. On this day in 2003, the UK repealed the controversial anti-gay amendment that barred schools from portraying gay relationships as anything other than abnormal. On this day in 2003, the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled 4-3 that the state constitution guarantees gay couples the right to marry. Good news in and of itself. Good news for gays. Good news for, can we call them gays? Is that the gays?
What?
The gays. That's homophobic, isn't it? The gays. All right.
No, it's the one.
Is this how you know that I'm not gay? Is that I can't do?
You gotta do
I can't do the one. My wife is coaching me into homophobia right now. No, but this is homo mimicry.
LGBTQ culture.
Okay, LGBTQ culture includes the snap, according to my wife. she would have done. All right.
Yes,
But
I
the Massachusetts Supreme Court rules that the state constitution guarantees gay couples the right to marry. Very tempting to see this as simple, straightforward good news, right? But isn't it horrifically bad news if we affirm that our rights come from a court and a constitution and their immediate political pandering interpretation of it, rather than from our human nature, from God, from our spiritual core as human beings, that is enough to guarantee our rights, that they don't come from authority? And with that being said, if you want to support this most important message of freedom, AdamVersusTheMan.com. Check out our Patreon. Give us $10 a month. Be a part of the Producers Club. You see how much fun it is every day to be a part of this conversation, making the show happen. And of course, you get a discount, 15% off and free shipping at our store. Another great way to support the show through AdamVersusTheMan.com. And of course, our affiliate is there as well, CigarFederation.com, where promo code Adam10, ADAM10, gets you 10% off your order. So you can join us for cigars and sunsets every Friday. And MakeThemDebate.com. Check out my profile there. Mercedes would appreciate the help. By the way, there was some chatter in the Producers Club earlier today that people want to see me debate Larry Sharpe as Adam Loves the Man. That could be a lot of fun. You want to see Larry Sharpe debate the most offensive statist, militarist veteran possible? It's possible. We can make it happen. MakeThemDebate.com. Check it out. And with that, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Mwah. Peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.